And welcome to another episode of Sports in the Mitten. We're trying something new here. I'm Adam Biggers, and you guys know me, Thomas Beindit. You guys know Thomas. He is my new co-host. Thomas, just want to take this time real quick, allow you to introduce yourself. I'm sure a lot of the people who follow me and read my stuff are familiar with your work as well.
Yeah,
I would think so.
Oh yeah, hopefully. Yeah, so I mean,
if they're not, they will be.
yeah, we're gonna be ramming it down people's throats, I guess, with me on here. But yeah, my name's Thomas Beindit. Grew up on the eastern side of the state, so to speak, about 30 minutes north of Detroit or so. Went to U of M, so I'm a Wolverine guy myself, and currently live and work in the state now. But huge sports fan, obviously, and excited to chat about hoops, football, and whatever else comes across here.
Yeah, we want to get your guys' feedback. We're going to try all kinds of lots of streams and downloads and stuff from the actual website sportsinthemitten.com, but we want to kind of branch out, try a couple other things. So this YouTube live format. This is our first time doing it, and this is Thomas and I's first show together. So it's going to be kind of it should be a fun night. Thomas, speaking of a fun night, this Kentucky-North Carolina game, we could get into that a little bit, but Michigan basketball, you know, you and I had talked about this the other night. I don't see any shame whatsoever in a Sweet 16 run. I have no problem with Derek Walton taking that shot. Your overall thoughts of the season, because let's face it, this was a team, 6 weeks ago that people, I think, that hadn't closely followed them had no idea that this would be kind of the ceiling. And to see it reached, I think it's a satisfying feeling for me, because I knew that they could be this good.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the narrative of the whole season, certainly for the first couple of months, is it's an inconsistent team, very offensive reliant, and the defense started coming along. The offense got a little bit more consistent. Obviously, Walton turned it up to a entirely different level than he ever played in his career, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't feel too disappointed if you're a Michigan fan on a Sweet 16 and a Big Ten tournament title. Obviously, based on what Oregon did to Kansas, you probably are a little frustrated because you probably thought, oh man, maybe we would have had a shot there to take down Kansas.
And I feel I've felt myself last night eating all of my words that you and we've talked about. I love Kansas. I was like, there's nobody who's going to beat Kansas. I mean, I was seriously getting ready and I'll find it in here somewhere. I was my friend Rachel, her husband. I'm sorry if you guys are seeing my torso here. Her husband is a huge KU fan, so I want Paul Pierce. I was gonna go present him with this if they won the national championship. So I'm sorry, Tommy, if you're watching, but I'll give it to you if they do win the national championship. If that ever happens. So, yeah, tough. And I remember nobody's going to beat Kansas. They're going to run Michigan, blah, 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 blah. Maybe it would have been more competitive because who saw a 74-60, right? Who saw a 14-point win for Oregon? I mean, if you would have told me 74-60 Kansas, I would have said, okay, did the Jayhawks have a bad game? I mean, we just saw them pound Purdue by 30.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the Ducks, and I kind of feel stupid. Maybe I underestimated Oregon too much. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Oregon's a good team. I always thought they were. I personally, heading into that Michigan-Oregon game, I thought Michigan was going to have the edge. Obviously they came up a little bit short, but Oregon's a good team. Brooks, Dorsey, great players, even Dylan Ennis, and great shot blocking ability around the rim. I think that was the difference, that Kansas didn't have anybody who could get there consistently, and obviously that was Michigan's biggest problem on what was that, Thursday night? Yeah, when they fell to the Ducks. So, but yeah, I wouldn't feel too disappointed. I'm certainly, it's a lost opportunity, a shot to go to the Final Four potentially, but I still think overall a good season, and certainly based on the expectations.
Absolutely. And this isn't final. I read a tweet. It was from Andrew Kahn. He writes for UM Hoops, and he tweeted that DJ Wilson evidently might be testing the waters, and Thomas, you and I had talked before the show. I mean, and we want to clarify this, for people who either don't know or just just for the sake of clarifying, they can test, where their position will be in the draft without signing with an agent. They can work out, and then they can come back to college. And Thomas, you feel like that might be actually a pretty good option for DJ Wilson. He did get a lot of attention during this tournament.
Yeah. I mean, I think nobody at this point thinks that DJ Wilson is a lottery pick, or probably not even a first round pick at this point. But certainly his status has gone up tremendously here over the last couple of weeks and really the last couple of months. And, I think it's to players' advantages to do this weird in-between thing where you can declare for the draft, but not actually, or I think the cutoff is May 24th, I want to say, where they have to make their decision on whether they're going to come back or go forward. To me, if you're Wilson, you work out with the teams, you get to play with some great players, and the NBA teams are going to tell you what you need to work on. But I don't think he quite has the pedigree and the hype right now to go pro, just because for people who don't follow the NBA day in and day out, there's a huge difference between being a first-round pick and a second-round pick, because you don't have a guaranteed deal in the second round. And to me, if I was an NBA prospect, especially a guy like DJ, who I believe has 2 years left of eligibility, I would not be going for a second-round pick unless I knew I was going to end up in the first. But you share those thoughts, or are you a little different on that?
No, I think if I'm DJ Wilson, why not? I mean, and just if anything, just the personal satisfaction of knowing where you stand among pros. What do scouts think of you? What do NBA teams think of you? I think that he needs more development. Again, there's no harm in testing, and go see what they think about you. But I mean, ideally, I think that he needs one more year at Michigan, and we've seen the strides that he's made so far. So I mean, why not stick around in college? Unless you hear something that you want to hear, like, hey, you're going to be a first-round pick and we're going to draft you, and you get a lot of positive feedback and you feel really good going into it. But very least, you know where you stand, and DJ Wilson is going to be a main piece of this team next year. And I wrote about it on FanRag Sports after they lost to Oregon. I don't think that this is done for the Wolverines. This wasn't just the shot. This wasn't Beeline. They're in good hands with John Beeline. They're a tournament team. They're going to be a tournament team next year. I don't think there's really any questioning that, if we continue to see the progression. And yeah, without Derek and without Zach, that it presents some challenges. But I mean, Mo Wagner is going to be a lot better. I have asked John Beeline 32 different ways this season has Mo Wagner scratched the surface, and he keeps telling me he's nowhere near as good as he's going to be. And I have to take John Beeline's word for it, because I saw another gear of Mo Wagner that I didn't see during the national tournament. So he's going to be a monster next year too. And people are talking about it. I think both of those guys next year, that's their last year in Michigan. But again, real quick on DJ Wilson, yeah, if he wants to test the water, see what they think of him. I mean, why not? I feel like you'd be foolish. It's an opportunity that's not going to hurt you in any way. It can only help you. So why not? And on that note, definitely we'll talk about Michigan, the recruiting class. We'll talk about a lot more throughout the season. But just there were these couple topics on our minds following this loss. I want to touch on Michigan State basketball real quick, and then I was at pro day interviews at Michigan on Friday, so I'll discuss that a little bit, because it's football season now, Thomas. It's football season, the spring game.
Yeah, good and bad.
What were your impressions of Michigan State? I figured round of 32. I was surprised that the Spartans beat Miami. I really am. I thought that they'd lose in the first round of Miami. So you come out and win by 20, and then you come return, and then you get Kansas, which, oops, that's a tough draw, and then you get pounded by 20 points. What were your impressions of Michigan State this year?
Well, I'd start by saying, just from a general note, I know there's a lot of pushback because they had the preseason injuries. They had, Bridges go in and out a little bit. and Harris going out late. So obviously injuries were a factor, but overall, I think this was an underachievement, to be honest. I know people kind of disagree on that, but if you're pulling in a top 5 recruiting class with a guy who is a surefire lottery pick, you would think you could do a little better than what would they finish with, like 19, 20 wins, something like that.
Yeah, it was not. It wasn't a great year statistically on paper at all.
And I mean, I know sometimes, we all talk about, recruiting rankings aren't perfect. They're obviously flawed here and there. Sometimes guys aren't ready. But if you're going to recruit like Duke and Kentucky, I feel like you got to hold them to Duke and Kentucky standards. And I can tell you that, Duke made the round of 32 and got knocked out, and they are not happy at all. And I don't think Michigan State fans should be satisfied with a round of 32 appearance with, again, a top 5 recruiting class, absolutely stacked. But, that aside, and moving to what they had, I thought they finished all right. I thought they were going to get by Miami, not by 20, obviously, which they ended up doing.
That was a good win.
But yeah, that was a great win. Certainly one of their best wins down the stretch. But I thought it was an okay year. As I said, if you kind of ignore the preseason expectations, I think it was a solid year given the injuries and the inexperience. But I have a feeling, looking back years in the future, when Miles Bridges is a big time NBA player, when some of these guys develop, I think MSU fans might look back and kind of shake their heads and be like, man, we only made the round of 32.
Well, there's going to be so many could have beens with Miles Bridges, and there's kind of 2 camps on this. Miles Bridges really does like college. That's true. I've talked to Miles, other people have talked to Miles. Everybody gets the same vibe. He likes being a college kid. He loves it. Okay. He's very coachable. He is clearly one of Tom Izzo's favorite players ever. I'm not just talking about, for the now. And, he loved Draymond. He loved Denzel and all those. I mean, it's not for the now. Miles is one of those guys that he's always going to remember. I remember him telling us, it was before a post-game interview. He said something like, "Enjoy Miles Bridges." Yeah, I think he knows he's gone. I mean, if I'm Miles Bridges, I'm a lottery pick. I'm gone. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Unless there's that little sliver of, if you're a Michigan State fan, there's that little sliver of hope. Like, how much does the college experience really mean to this kid? Is he going to come back? Because he speaks in a context of us getting better. We need to get better for us. Well, get better what, next year? And us, does that mean that you're a part of us? Or there's this. I'm trying to dissect the word usage here to see if you could get any inclination of either one way. And I believe that he's 50. He says that he's 50-50. I mean, I'll take it at face value. I think he really just does want to let the process play out, see what happens. If for some reason he's not a projected lottery pick, then maybe he comes back. Because I mean, there's millions of dollars of difference when you start getting into mid and late first round. So, I mean, other than that, to come back. As far as Michigan State, I will say, yes, it was an underachievement, and you got to look at it in this context too. I mean, last year that was a national championship team. I thought it was a national championship team. Loaded. You had the seniors. You had Denzel. You had every single thing that you could want is in it. You had the athletic big man and Deontay. You had the bruising big man and Matt Costello. Kenny Goins was able to play a supporting role rather than a starting role. And then again, Denzel and Bryn. I mean, you had it all. And this year, I thought that there would be a chance to maybe make a little bit more noise. And you mentioned the preseason hype, and I mean the injury to Miles early. I know. The injuries that I do have to say this. I think if Gavin Schilling was healthy, that God, and I'm like thinking before I say this. Do I really want to say this? I do believe that a healthy Gavin Schilling would make them better. And I'm referring back to, I remember I was talking with Chris Ballas the other day of the Wolverine, and he said something about someone wrote that Michigan State would be 5 games better with Gavin Schilling, and I don't know about that, but I will say that maybe 2 or 3 games better. I don't know. I mean, it's hard.
Yeah.
You gotta believe that having that extra body in there, and then that doesn't force Kenny Goins to have to play so much. Doesn't force Matt Van Dyke to have to play so much. You have to believe at least having Gavin in there would have made a difference. And then and if Aaron Harris didn't get injured, I mean, I thought if everything was cooking in their favor, and these were my thoughts in the beginning of the year, maybe these guys were a Sweet 16, Elite 8 team talent wise because they come in with a super hyped freshman class, right? So I mean, there's going to be a lot of what ifs when it comes to this team and Miles Bridges. Football. I want to talk. Do you want to talk about football?
Yeah, sure. Let's talk about football.
What do you make of all? And I'm going to call it nonsense. I'm going to call it BS. I'm going to call it all of that. This positionless crap with Jabrill, size-wise. If they're concerned about his size, I'll tell you, he's jacked. Okay, I just saw him. Jabrill Peppers is in great condition. He is a football player. He's a safety. He can play linebacker. He's viewing himself as a safety. I don't get all this. They hype up and then and it's like they want to tear him down a little bit going, entering the draft. What do you make of all this stuff surrounding Jabrill?
Well, I'd start by saying anybody who doesn't think Jabrill Peppers was one of the best players in the country last year just didn't watch Michigan football.
Or any football.
Yeah, ever. I mean, like the thing that I have loved, and maybe it's because he's the easy target because he's the star guy of the team. But I feel like there's this group, this faction of people, which I don't know if they're Ohio State people or Michigan. I have no idea. But it's like they immediately, as soon as a game ends, runs over to the box score. Okay, how many tackles did he have? Now we got to compare him to this guy. How many interceptions did he have? And to me, it's nonsense. You watch the games. He was that defense by far. The most important part. That entire thing was built around him. There's no way they do half. Well, maybe not half, but there's no way they're even close to what they were without him last year. That aside, I mean, I feel like certain teams are going to be pushed off by the fact that he doesn't have this clear-cut position. I mean, personally, I'd be surprised if he didn't play safety in the NFL. I mean, that's certainly what he says. But I feel like certain teams will be scared off by that. But if you're that scared to have to figure out how to use a player like that, you're probably not going to be in the NFL that long. That would be my theory.
I've never coached football a day in my life. I can tell you this. I'm not a GM. I can tell you this. There is no way that I don't think my team is better, more athletic, and more versatile with Jabrill Peppers. So, I do think he has a clear-cut position. I think he's a clear-cut safety. I mean, size-wise, everything, he's right there with a lot of these guys. I think that he could do a lot more than that too. And what's kind of surprising, if the chatter about, well, we don't know, what position he's going to play. Well, teams have, at least one team looked at him as primarily a linebacker. He told me, and then he also said that another team was talking about using him as an offensive player. So I feel like everybody who's trying to build this case, this positionless case against Jabrill, it just gets torn down. And here's something else too, Thomas. Really smart guy, Jabrill. I think anybody who's talked to him, they can tell he's real fiery. He's real passionate. You can tell when he's talking about football. And I asked him about the separating factors, and he just puts his hands to his temple. He's like, just knowing the game, looking at me, shaking. He's like, just knowing the game. Their favorite route concepts, the break that he likes to use, to get separation and all the stuff. Jabrill Peppers is a ultimate football player. He's one of the most exciting players that I've ever seen. Last year, I don't think there's anything that there's nothing more he could have done. And then he mentioned, the jack of all trades, master of none, comment by people. Well, that's clearly wrong. I mean, he was a master kick returner, master punt returner. What are you talking about? I mean, he's a master offensive weapon. The fact that he's on the field drew so much attention from opposing teams. Jabrill's influence was all over that. I mean, I wasn't always satisfied with the way that they did use him, but at the same time, I understood, because when you have like, especially
Yeah.
offensively, sometimes I feel like some of the offensive stuff was forced.
I agree. I really felt like it was late in the year. I'm not sure. Obviously we're a few months separated from the season now. But from just what's popping up in my mind, I remember. I believe it was either the Ohio State or the Florida State game, but it seemed like the offense would be moving the ball, and then they bring in Peppers for these plays, which the defense kind of knew what was going to
Yeah,
happen, and it just kind of took all the energy out of those drives. But overall, yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, he was dynamic when he was on the field, and I mean, he certainly made mistakes. He wasn't a perfect player, but again, if he was perfect, Michigan would have been undefeated in the national championship.
and here's another thing. A couple quick notes about Jabrill, and I'll wrap up with some other quick notes about players. Don Brown told me that Jabrill is one of the smartest players that he's ever played or that he's ever coached. Wilton Spate told me that he overheard scouts, all kinds of people at a pro day talking about how smart Jabrill Peppers was, his football savvy. You've heard his teammates talk about him. They call him Freak. I mean, he's the real deal. So if there's anything, maybe they want to try to create a little bit of negative buzz, get him a drop. It's like it's a strategy. Maybe someone's hoping they could get. Jabrill even said himself he's going to be a steal. Whoever gets him, wherever they get him, he's going to be a steal.
Yeah.
And I believe that. Ryan Glasgow, he had contacted. He said Eagles and Saints, a few other teams. Taco Charlton was talking about meeting with the Buccaneers, I believe. I have all these videos on YouTube, so feel free to go watch those. But very positive. I mean, Matt Godin. I talked to Matt. I talked to Eric Magnuson. Talked to Davion Smith. All these guys, for the most part, very positive going in. That Davion didn't perform as well as he would have liked, but I feel like that Davion is a guy that you can only base off tape. I don't feel like if you base him on like numbers 40 times, he's not going to impress you. But if you watch like that BYU run, that's how many guys can do that. And I mean, I'm not saying that Davion Smith is a super rare special running back, and I mean, I think he's a borderline NFL guy, but he has stability and he can take a hit, and that's I've never seen Davion Smith get laid out. Never.
Yeah,
Never.
I don't know if I've seen that. I think, I mean, everyone knew what his concern was. It was his speed. I mean, that's the biggest thing. He's not going to run away from defenses, especially not in the NFL. But his asset, I agree. It's always been his ability to break tackles and get an extra 2-3 yards where another running back's going to lose one or get 0. And yeah, you're not going to see that on a pro day because obviously, it's not live football.
Yeah, and he wasn't thrilled. I could tell by the look in his face. He wasn't thrilled, but I feel like Davion's got a few things going for him. Davion's an intelligent player. I think that he's also very open to constructive criticism. I think that he's one of those players that truly knows that he needs to improve in some areas. But I also think that he's a guy who's smart enough that knows that he possesses some things that other guys don't, and that is the ability to absorb contact. That is, he told me too as well. A surprising thing, he could catch out of the backfield. I mean, that's an underrated quality sometimes, I think, with a running back. And again, I don't think that Davion, he's not a shoe-in pro. I think he is a borderline NFL guy, but at the same time, he's somebody who's willing to work hard to get where they want to go. And the same is true for Matt Godin. Matt Godin, was a reserve most of his career. He really didn't even have any type of breakout footage or until his fifth year at Michigan. And here we are. I was talking to Matt on Pro Day, and he's living in the moment. He's happy that this is happening for him. But I think that he realizes, that he's got a lot to prove. And at the same time, he doesn't have all that mileage on his body. He's got all the knowledge of being at Michigan, but I do think that kind of is an advantage for some guys, especially if they want to get a defensive end, defensive tackle. Matt will, be a DE. He's not big enough for defensive tackle. I don't know, maybe, but I look at him as a defensive end.
Yeah, probably.
And maybe they take that into account. He's got the body. He's a smart guy too, and he's got decent size. So maybe they look at him and say, hey, this is a low risk, potentially high reward with Matt Godin, because he's going in there, chip on his shoulder. Matt's always been the guy who wanted to prove himself, and I feel like that he did. So,
yeah, I mean, the thing for me is, like, you look at that D line Michigan had last year, which I know people might have been a little underwhelmed with parts of the team down the stretch, but that's an all-time D line. I don't care what anyone says. I mean, I really think, looking back in 4 or 5 years, people are going to be hard pressed to say that wasn't the best D line in Michigan football history. And I know people are going to be enraged that I dare question, 1997 or anything like that, but that was legit too deep at every position. And the fact that Godin got in there and got real snaps, I think speaks a lot, because that line, maybe all 8 will go to the NFL at some stretch. Like, that's an NFL D line to some degree, obviously younger, but and if he's getting time there, that's got to speak volumes for the pros.
Absolutely. And we met in the past 2 years, they've been really good too. And Matt, the past 2 years, but this past season was obviously the big one for him. But yeah, we're looking at I agree with you. In 4 or 5 years, we're going to be talking about, like, holy crap, Chris Wormley, Taco Charlton, Ryan Glasgow, we're going to be Matt Godin. We're going to be talking about all these guys, Brian Monet, Mo Hurst, and all these guys I think are going to be in the NFL at some point. Like I said, I'm on the fence with Matt only because he doesn't have the track record that some of these guys had. He didn't play, I mean, he didn't play for 4 years like Taco did. He didn't play, he didn't start for 3 years like Ryan did. But he does have, I think, the advantage of not having all those in-game miles on his body. But yeah, if you put him at a different school, maybe he is the guy on their D line. You throw him somewhere else. And just like with Mike McCray, I thought last year, Mike, if you put Mike McCray on another team in the Big Ten, maybe he's their defensive star, because they were just so stacked at defense. And Mike had a great year. But yeah, about 40 seniors, 20. I'm hearing 24, 25 of these guys, like real legitimate NFL prospects. And by all accounts, this was the biggest pro day at any school in history. And of course it happened at Michigan because of, that Jim Harbaugh guy. Somehow he's got all these NFL connections and just seems to know how to develop players. I don't know what's going on here, Thomas, but Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah. I mean, I know when he got here, the assumption was, he was going to turn Michigan into an NFL factory. And I know a lot of these players, well, really all of these, certainly the seniors, were recruited by Hoke. But, I mean, it's certainly showing so far. And, if you're a recruit or, you're someone looking at a potential NFL future, I would certainly think that pro day, how huge it was, will speak volumes.
Absolutely. And I'll have some more pro day stuff. I have a column on Jabrill that's on fanragsports.com and on Twitter at fanrag_u. I tweeted it from my account at AdamBiggers81. I'll have a feature on Eric Magnuson, working on we'll try to get Davion Smith probably at some point this week, either a phone call or hopefully live or something on the podcast. But probably have something on Kenny Allen. Kenny performed well at the pro day. I think he's got a bright future. I think Kenny will Kenny's a great punter. Absolutely great. I think he's got no question, a bright NFL future. But there's so much to dissect. The spring availability opening up, the spring game. Thomas, I think you'll probably be at the spring games. We're gonna have all kinds of stuff to talk about. So we want to thank everybody for watching. This was the first episode with Thomas as my co-host. It was our first live episode. Pretty fun, actually. I like this format a lot better than what I've done in the past. But I like the it's almost like we're in the same room, which is good.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And I like, and closing note, I do like those curtains. Are those chickens on the curtains behind you, Thomas?
Yeah, I think so. I didn't pick them out, but whatever, they're up.
They look good. Hey, what a my kitchen actually has chicken wallpaper at the top,
Nice.
chicken wallpaper border. So I didn't put it there; it was here when I got there. Anyway, I'm Adam Biggers. You can follow me on Twitter at AdamBiggers81. You can listen to all the old episodes of Sports in the Mitten on sportsinthemitten.com, and you can see all of our new stuff on sportsinthemitten.com.
And I'm Thomas Beindit. You can follow me on Twitter at tbeindit.
And Big Ten Powerhouse, right?
Yeah. You can check out Big Ten Powerhouse for your Big Ten hoops coverage as well.
I want to thank everybody for watching. We'll catch you next time. Have a good one.